Paladins is a good game. Full stop, no follow-up joke, no funny one-liner. It is a good game. You could download Paladins right now, load into quick play, and for the most part, you'd probably have a good time. But we must address the elephant in the room, and quite frankly, one of the main reasons I am making this video. The game is outdated. Really outdated. The game runs on Unreal Engine 3. I'm sorry, I don't think you heard me. The game runs on Unreal Engine 3. The same engine responsible for Asura's Wrath, Batman Arkham Asylum, Borderlands 2, Fable, DC Universe Online, and Fat Princess, for all three of you that remember that game. There are a ton of other games I could bring up that would make your eyes pop out of your head like a cartoon, like Mass Effect or Gears of War also being on that engine, but I think you guys get the point. The game isn't just outdated in its engine and graphics, which honestly I don't care too much for graphics, but the age is pretty noticeable on this game.
Quality of like Pip's model. Holy shit.
Pip is one of the, oh my god. I was gonna say he is one of the oldest champs, but oh my god, what the f is that model, man? But Paladins is also outdated in a lot of its practices in which new games are given tons of praise for abandoning, Marvel Rivals specifically, which I'm gonna briefly bring up later. Getting back into Paladins for the making of this video was definitely kind of a surprising experience. It almost felt like the development of the game slowed down, which is definitely a good thing because I remember this game doing too damn much. Back then, and by back then I mean like 4 years ago, if you left the game for like anything close to a year, you would come back to like 5 new characters, a weird collab, and a season's pass being shoved down your throat. But when I got back into this game recently, I only got a few pop-ups, nothing egregious, but there was only one new character that I wasn't really familiar with, which really shocked me. For someone like myself who has played the game for years and got tired of that system, this is an overall positive thing for me. But for the health of the game, it's definitely a negative thing. The lack of changes and content make it clear that Hi-Rez is losing faith in Paladins, which kinda sucks because, once again, Paladins is a good game. It's playable, but even more importantly, it's fun and unique.
I'm moving like French Montana, huh?
Hey guys, Editor Bugrais here. So, I wrote this part of the script months ago, and apparently the reason the game's development felt like it was slowing down is because it hasn't just slowed down, it completely stopped. Yet, Paladins is no longer being worked on in any capacity. The servers are up so you can still play the game, but this is it for Paladins. This news is pretty sad, but it was inevitable. I just did not think it would be this soon. But you just can't avoid the numbers. The game was at its lowest player count ever. The point of this entire video is to be a retrospective on Paladins, and hopefully if a Paladins 2 happens, they can learn from the mistakes they made for this game, because Paladins is awesome. I love this game, and I want a semi-up-to-date version of it so it's easier to get into for a wider audience, and they'll understand why this game is as loved as it is. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's just get back into the video. In this video, I'm going to go over the good and bad of Paladins, and then conclude on why this game needs a sequel. So, without further ado, let's just start with the good.
I'm on 12 Vicodins smoking on Scooby-Doo dick.
What does it mean when it tells me I have like 2 notifications on Adroxus? Does he want to talk to me?
Despite Paladins being a 5v5 hero shooter, it takes a lot from MOBAs. Things like locking in characters, meaning you can't counter swap mid-game, buying items, making builds, unlocking characters with the in-game currency you collect over time. More on that last one later. But basically, Paladins is not just the Overwatch clone everyone still somehow thinks it is, and honestly, it has never been that way. And what I'm about to say might sound like a massive insult, but I swear this amounts to something good. Paladins feels like a combination of Overwatch and League of Legends. The best way I can describe this combo is 2 negatives making a positive, because other than some similarities, Paladins is very much its own unique thing. One prime example I can bring up are Paladins players. They're pretty nice for the most part, at least in my experience. I only have a total of like 200 something hours on Paladins if we're combining game time across consoles, which is so funny to think that 200 hours on a game nowadays is considered amateur numbers. I remember when I was a kid, I would always be surprised when someone says they have hundreds of hours on a game. I used to think that anyone who played a game for more than 500 hours looked like Wings of Redemption, but almost everyone I know today has at least one game with 500 or more hours on it. Anyway, I only bring this up to say that despite me being around for most of Paladin's cycle, my first experience being back in 2016 on my PS4, I rarely had any negative interactions with players. Even my first game coming back to Paladins to get some inspiration to want to make this video, I played Azan. And despite my performance being very mediocre, I even let the people in chat know that this is my first game in like a year, everyone was chill about it. I even remember like a few seconds after typing that in chat, everybody was spamming the no problem voice line, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, the point is, despite Paladins taking a lot from two games which are mostly known for negative things, one of those key things being the infamously toxic players,
He's fighting when Talia is in my jungle, and Blitz is not moving when Rakan is bot.
it's quite ironic that Paladins players are rather relaxed for the most part. Anyway, let's actually talk about the positives of the game itself. How does Paladins play, and what do I mean by in-game builds and items? In Paladins, you can customize your character via talents and loadouts. A talent modifies or strengthens certain abilities or attributes, sometimes with a downside to keep things balanced. A loadout is a set of 5 cards with a pool of 15 points. You can give each card up to 5 points depending on how much you need that card's ability. There are 5 cards for every ability and 5 cards that generally affect your character. The kind of build you make drastically affects your playstyle, whether you're going for something more defensive, for an easier or more laid-back experience, maximizing your damage and lowering as many cooldowns to play aggressively, or maybe just making a fun build around an ability you want to spam because you think it's funny. There are a lot of options. This card system is what separates this game from its contemporaries, and while I absolutely love it, I can kind of understand why the system flew under the radar for most people, because I remember back then you actually had to buy individual cards with in-game currency, or I think you unlock them in chests, I don't know. But either way, for like 2 years, the system around getting these cards was nothing short of egregious. That was back in 2018 though, so we have been able to make whatever build we want for free since then, so it's not all bad. It's just more of the unfortunate history of Paladins. But for real though, I love this card system. I think it's great. I love it when PvP games give you the ability to customize your character beyond cosmetics. More options for customization is pretty much always a good thing. Now, on the topic of good things about Paladins, one phenomenon that I have to bring up, which might shock some of you, especially the 3 remaining Overwatch players, is the fact that the tank role is really fun. I don't know what it is about tanks and Paladins, but they all really feel like tanks. Every tank can hold their own pretty damn well, and while tanks are an important part of the team composition, they aren't really required in a team to win. I play quite a bit of support too, and sometimes I'll be the only support in a team of just damage and flank champs, and we're still able to squeak out a win despite not having a tank. That's just another thing that I love about Paladins, is that you can win with almost any team composition if you just play things right, no matter how absolutely scuffed the gameplay might be. There are 4 kinds of champs in Paladins: tank, damage, flank, and support, and the game urges players to choose at least one of each in a team composition. But since this is a 5v5 game, what happens to the 5th role? Well, it just means that one person gets to play whatever the hell they want, and I really like that. The tank role in Paladins is pretty unique in the sense that despite being one role, the characters are split into 2 categories: point tanks and off tanks. If you think about it, it's kinda self-explanatory, but to explain it without getting into too much detail, point tanks are champs that prioritize the point, controlling it, capturing it, defending it, etc. And off tanks are champs that prioritize control outside of the point, basically playing a bulky version of a flank or damage champ. People tend to favor playing off tanks because they're easier to get into and people generally consider them more fun, and I can understand that. Azan, Rom, and Khan are all prime examples. Off tanks typically have more mobility than point tanks, which allows them to move around the map easier. Rom is a perfect example considering one of his abilities is literally a run, and it's one of the funnest parts of his overall kit. Yeah! Now, while off tanks are cool and all, one of my favorite champs to play is a point tank. And I feel like you guys wouldn't expect me to be the type of guy to play this champ, but I just love the dominance they exert on the point and their sheer resilience that makes it fun to just sometimes bully the enemy tank who dares try to take the point away from you. And that champ is Fernando. I mostly use Aegis Fernando, which is the build that puts emphasis on his shield, which might seem boring on the surface, but all it really does is just give me a solid defense so I don't die as fast. But there's just something so funny about having your shield up for your DPS or support and watching the enemy tank forget about you for a second just for you to jump scare them with 500 damage by fireballing them and burning them down. On the topic of things I appreciate about Paladins, this game has a mechanic that was pretty ahead of its time, Overwatch 2 only recently adopting it, but Paladins has had it for years, that mechanic being passive healing. In Paladins, if you're out of combat for a bit, your character will slowly get their health back. I love this mechanic because while it might seem kind of broken on the surface, all it really does is make it so you're not as reliant on your support. Instead of scouring the map for a health pack or panicking trying to find your support, all you have to do is find a safe space to breathe and you can get back into the action right after. It's a great system. Another thing I appreciate about Paladins are the horses. I am very thankful for the existence of these Xbox 360 looking ass horses. There's a lot to love about mounts in Paladins, like how in other hero shooters with most characters you just slowly walk to the point, but here you ride on a horse, which is much faster than your character's walking speed. Also, I love how the default horse is the same horse for every character, so some characters look like they don't fit on it at all, and it is hilarious. Whenever I play Fernando, I feel like Radon from Elden Ring, because there has to be some gravity magic going on for his big ass to fit on that horse. Also, if you buy the master riding item, you can make the horse go faster. Getting back to the point quickly is a super underrated advantage. Speaking of items, that's another thing I really like about Paladins. Items in Paladins are simple to understand and also just overall make the game less annoying. Paladins has a lot of crowd control and stuns, which granted has been toned down significantly over the years, but still exists, and if you're tired of getting stunned for a long time and want to reduce the damage or duration of crowd control abilities, items give you the option to do that. Items also just give you the chance to have some counterplay. You don't have to put up with the enemy team's BS at its full potential. Just buy the appropriate items and the game instantly becomes more bearable. Like if the enemy team has a lot of shields being thrown around, just buy Wrecker and dealing with them immediately becomes a little easier. Speaking of items, Cauterize is now something that everyone has, and it's kind of a core mechanic in Paladins, but it used to be an item. Cauterize is basically a built-in anti-heal, which surprisingly doesn't break the game, it doesn't make supports useless, it doesn't make anyone OP, it just makes the game much more bearable. And don't just take it from me, take it from the community. I made a post on the Paladins subreddit recently asking people what they appreciate about Paladins, and just look at how many replies mention Cauterize. It is crazy, but also very understandable because the existence of Cauterize is what makes matches never end up like those ridiculous tank 1v1s in Overwatch where you are damn near invincible because of your supports. Another thing I really appreciate about Paladins is the art style. If this game didn't have this charming, cartoony, high fantasy theme, this game would not have lasted this long. Paladins is just one of the many examples of how art direction matters much more than graphics, because graphically this game is outdated, but I can still appreciate a lot about this game. For example, how cool some of these characters look, like Androxus, Azan, Atlas, Bomb King, Dredge, Seven, Genos, Maldamba, Rom, Terminus. Most characters in this game have fun and creative designs. You could tell Evil Mojo was not afraid to get experimental, and surprisingly, there aren't many bad or out-of-place characters in Paladins. Okay, except Kasumi. I don't even know where to start with how weird she is, man, so I just won't. All I have to say is her primary fire is an auto-aim voodoo doll. Anyway, I could go on about the little things I appreciate about Paladins, things like sound design and map design, but the last thing I'll bring up are the skins, because despite the fact that I have not spent a penny on skins, a lot of people have, and I don't really blame them, because some of these skins are really cool. Whenever Evil Mojo goes all out on a skin, they really go all out. Most skins that have a crazy design usually come with a whole new set of voice lines, sometimes from an entirely different voice actor, which is super cool.
Ops wanted some initiative. Blew up their entire quadrant. I'm moving like Oppenheimer.
I don't need medals. I just want this war to end. Dance with me in these endless waltz. If you won't surrender, I'll kill you myself. I will not die. Not yet, my friend.
Did you actually believe I would be defeated? Your brazenness is quite amusing. I shall return to collect what is mine. Do not fail me, beast. I will not die, not again.
I show my enemies no mercy. Others say my tactics are too brutal and violent. I say, is that even possible? No one escapes.
What comp are we up against? I'll be farming you for hours. I hate losing Elo. I can't pause online games, Mom. I will not die. Not yet, amigo.
Paladins just has some really cool cosmetics, but I am not the type to buy cosmetics because A, and B, if I'm gonna buy a skin, I won't be doing it in a first-person game because I want to see the whole model, not just the weapon. Alright, now that I've gone through a good amount of things that I find good about Paladins, let's get into what I find not so good about this game. Cue that silly transition.
Rome wasn't built in a day, but this 9mm certainly was.
Yeah, you get out DPS'd by a bot. How do you feel?
That's how I feel.
Audible moaning.
Just and came at the same time.
Did it take a screenshot?
Right off the bat, the first thing I want to bring up, which I personally find to be the most frustrating thing about Paladins, is the whole buying champions thing. I don't even know where to start with how much I dislike this practice, and I'm so glad games are slowly abandoning this, Marvel Rivals being the most recent example. Not to mention that when you buy a champion, you don't even unlock everything on the spot. You have to play a bunch of matches to get to a certain mastery to have all your talents unlocked, which is just so stupid. Is the game scared that I'm gonna have too much fun or something? I don't know, but I find this whole practice to be nothing short of trash. The only reason I can think of as to why this is still a thing is maybe trying to push players to buy the microtransaction that unlocks all the champions for you, and I just find that weird. I imagine most of the money this game generates is probably from the cosmetics because people really like the cosmetics. I don't know, I might be reading too deep into it, but at the end of the day, I really don't like this practice, and I hope more games in the future follow in Marvel Rivals' footsteps in favoring the player experience over the monetization. But knowing the gaming landscape today, that is probably not happening anytime soon. Another thing I don't like about Paladins is this really weird thing that unfortunately is really common to see in this game, and probably mostly happens due to the game's servers, but sometimes when you hit an enemy, it just won't register. Like, you'll see some kind of indicator in the game that your projectile hit the enemy, but they will not take any damage. Thankfully, when I was gathering gameplay for this video, I did not see this happen that much. But I remember this used to happen so often, and it was so frustrating that it was the reason I'd return to this game on an almost yearly basis, because every time I think of opening this game, I ask myself if I really have the strength of dealing with a Willow who keeps escaping on 1 HP because the Paladin servers secretly hate my guts. Speaking of this game secretly hating my guts, matchmaking. Yeah, matchmaking in this game has always been bad, but at the same time, it's not entirely the game's fault. Paladins isn't exactly a game that's thriving right now, so most people that are playing are probably in 5 stacks playing quick play like it's ranked. I can't even hate on these people that much because I used to be part of the problem. Back when the not so funny virus was taking the world by storm, I used to enter random 5-stack VCs in the Paladin server and run quick play for Lord knows how many hours at a time. Half of my playtime comes from that, and honestly, it was a great time. The main problem with matchmaking, though, is that the chances of you getting a fair match is extremely low. Most matches are either really boring steamrolls where you play against a team of Neanderthals, or a 5-stack made up of vampires the way these jackasses have never seen the sun. Honestly, other than the unfortunate matchmaking, server issues, the game being outdated as hell, the whole buying champions garbage, I don't have many other problems. I made another post on the Paladins subreddit, this time asking what people didn't like about Paladins, and a lot of the responses generally agreed with the things I just stated, but one thing stuck out to me which I find really funny, and is always a practice developers should avoid, but I did not know that they did this with Paladins. Basically, the Paladins subreddit for the past god knows how many years has been an echo chamber for bad players, people complaining about champs without showing any gameplay, but only showing their scoreboard, and people generally just validating each other's bad opinions. This is an issue in a lot of communities, but it is a big issue in the Paladins community, because a lot of the better players, or at least the players that aren't garbage, aren't very vocal about their opinions, which wouldn't be a problem if it weren't for the fact that apparently Evil Mojo takes what the bad players say at face value and makes changes to the game based off of that, which has led to a lot of questionable balance changes. One balance problem that has stemmed from this that I can name off the top of my head is how, despite this game having 59 champions, I only ever see like 20 of them, because Evil Mojo has this terrible habit of nerfing a champion to hell whenever they're decently strong. Like with all the gameplay I've gathered for this video, between the last 20 champions released, I've only seen 6 of them appear in my games more than once. Almost every champion that I frequently encounter released in 2018 or beforehand. Actually, now that I think about it, there is one more thing that I don't like about Paladins, and might be one of this game's biggest problems. And that problem is the absolutely insane lack of promotion that this game receives. Other than that one Ruby collab, I cannot recall a single ad, collab, promotion, anything official that attempts to bring me back to this game or reel in new players. Some of you guys might bring up the cinematics around new characters, and yeah, I might be a fan of them. Yes, the views are decent despite the game's state, and yes, the animation is fantastic, but it unfortunately doesn't really count. Anytime I've considered getting back into this game, it's either because I'm watching Paladins YouTubers like Raven Trick, Frostfangs, or Andrew Chicken, or it's just that usual itch you get with random multiplayer games every few months, similar to how everyone has a 2-week Minecraft phase at least once a year. Now, with that being said, let's get into the closing statements for this video, because this video is not just a Paladins retrospective, but it's about how this game needs a sequel and how they should execute it. So without further ado, cue that silly transition.
Pistol built like Dave Portnoy.
Thank you, my liege.
Okay, bear
Yo, use of Andrew Snipe?
I'm not Andrew. I'm not
That's
Andrew.
me.
Oh, you're not
No, I'm Andrew.
The chances of a Paladins 2 ever happening are about the same odds as Sega making a new Knights game. There are people out there who would love to see it, but the only thing companies care about is if it's profitable. I've been on and off writing the script for this video over the course of like 2 months, so at this point in time, as I'm writing this part of the script, Paladins is basically dead. The game is playable, the servers are up, but the game will no longer have any major updates. It seems Hi-Rez has put all their support into Smite 2, which, like, sure, I guess I don't care for Smite, man. I'm sorry, if you like the game, God bless, brother, but I've never had any interest in this game. I've never heard anyone even talk about this game, let alone in a positive light. I've only heard this game being called a budget League of Legends. The only person that I can remember that ever touched Smite was when my friend picked up the game for a couple of weeks because Smite had a collab with Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is kinda cool. Smite, numbers-wise, is doing pretty good, so people seem to care about the game. That's cool and all, but putting all your eggs into one basket is never a good idea. Most companies behind the most popular multiplayer games have other IPs to fall back on, while Hi-Rez doesn't have that privilege. Other than Smite, Hi-Rez does not have a single IP to fall back on. Also, Paladins is not the first game they screwed up by abandoning it or not giving it the right support. Games like Rogue Company, Realm Royale, or more recently, Divide Knockout, all these games that once had a substantial amount of players, are all dead. Hi-Rez runs through games like an iPad kid runs through YouTube Shorts. It's really sad that Hi-Rez has such garbage resource management. They seem to only know how to focus on one project at a time, which is fine if you're working on single-player games, but all of their games are online PvP games. The chances of a Paladins 2 happening is extremely low, which sucks, because again, Paladins is a good game. The main issue is that this game is just outdated as hell. It just needs to be on a modern engine with somewhat modern graphics, new servers, add a couple new maps, make all the champs free, and maybe cut out like half the cast, man. I think there are collectively 3 people out there who care about Kasumi or Betty La Bomba, and one of them probably just died 5 minutes ago and got put on an Instagram reel. If anyone over at Hi-Rez sees this video, just know that there are people out there who care about Paladins and would love to see a Paladins 2. I don't think you understand how awesome Paladins is. It's not just an Overwatch clone, and it never was. I have played this game for years. Granted, I don't have the most hours in this game. That probably goes to Raven Trick. But the first time I ever tried Paladins was back in 2016. I was 12 years old when I first played this game, and now 9 years later, I am 21 years old, and my love for this stupid ass game has not disappeared. Some folks at home, and even some folks at Hi-Rez, might be asking the question of, if a Paladins 2 ever happens, would it be profitable? And I just think that's such an unfair question to ask. If a Paladins 2 ever happens and it's trash, it's not gonna fail because people don't care about Paladins, it's gonna fail because it's trash. But if the game is good, it absolutely can be profitable unless Hi-Rez decides to do what they usually do with their games and play absentee father and get the milk. Making a Paladins 2 is definitely a difficult task, but the Paladins community is probably one of the chillest communities surrounding a multiplayer game. Also, the content creators for the game, who most of them know what they're talking about, are also great people. I know this is like the third time I mentioned Raven Trick in this video, but he's the most relevant Paladins content creator for a reason. His videos and the game's balancing are really well thought out, and Hi-Rez could absolutely learn a thing or two from those videos. The point I'm trying to make here is that if Hi-Rez wants to greenlight the development of Paladins 2, they don't have to do it alone. The community is more than willing to help, or at least give suggestions, ideas, or engage in healthy discussions about the game. With that being said, I don't want this video to go on for too long, so my final message to anyone who stuck around for this long: first of all, thank you for having a decent attention span. And second of all, if you have never played Paladins, then please go ahead and do so. The game is awesome and not hard to run because of how ancient the engine is, so even if you have a crappy PC, you can probably at least run Paladins. Also, if this video somehow gets enough eyes on the game and people start playing it, then maybe this will get the attention of Evil Mojo and Hi-Rez, and the chances of a second game isn't completely void. Although I highly doubt this video could make that big of an impact. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the video. If you enjoyed, hit like, share your thoughts and criticisms in the comments below. Also, I am very close to hitting 2,000 subscribers, so feel free to subscribe, that would be awesome. Follow the other socials in the description, and yeah, that's about it. Bye bye!
How are you doing, Yusuf?
Are you guys excited to play some Paladins?
Game sucks. Don't even start.
I'd be shocked to see a single Arab in the server.
No, man. Sometimes I'll be playing with a Victor named Abu Ali. He does 2 damage. Please.
Question: who the f is Obese Kumar? Because I don't think it's one of you guys.
That's me.
Definitely
That's me. That's me.
That was definitely for Grace.
Yusuf, how do you say "is it over for me" in German?
Oh my god.
Ist es over for me? Ist es over for me?
Look at our profiles compared to them.
Somebody help me with the ROM, please.
Oh no. Okay.
No, I forgot. You guys are like flying.
Behind us.
He's one. Can I get him? I sniped him. Let's go. Rush, rush. Oh, motherfucker! Oh my god, how long does this ult stand for? Holy shit, he's in our back line! This hit! Okay.
Okay. No, okay.
GG's lads, I think it's been a good one.
It's been a good one, fam.
Alright lads, cheers.
Cheers, lads. Sucks. We're gonna play with a f***ing bot! It sucks! We have a f***ing AI in our team!
Oh!
Or not.
Wow, Kinessa just knocked me off my horse, that's so cool. Bro, the Kinessa needs to actually die, to be honest.
Oh no, what?
If you want to do something really funny, just like jump scare the enemy Kinessa, because she's gonna try to knock me off my horse, which she will in about T-3. 2, she just did, that's so cool.
Tank on the left, tank on the left.
Oh! Careful, careful, his ult. Are you f***ing kidding me? I'm going back in. Wait, holy sh**! I used my ult and I pushed him off the point and I got it!
What are they? Oh, that's rockets.
Yeah.
What the hell is happening? Hello?
Oh, that's why we're losing. We literally don't have a player. You saw it at the reviving.
Oh my god,
Oh my god, we're like, oh, I wonder why we're not winning. Huh.
Hello?
Wow, this game looks like shit, man. What does my F do? Oh, it's a grapple to enemies. That's interesting.
No,
Grapple
it's,
to
it's just
grab
God.
on that thing.
Shut up. That's alright. I'm stalling. Not that stalling, but I'm
Stalling?
not. That gen assault would have been so huge. Ooh! I'm playing so good! Ooh! Holy shit! Ah! Oh my god! Holy! Oh my god, I feel like LeBron!
LeBron James.
Holy, what a
LeBron
game.
James.
What a game.
I'm not gonna lie, dog. I did not expect this game to bang, but this game kind of bangs.
Yeah.